I'd like to introduce our presenters today. Jay Han, who is Executive Director of CSAA, will be joining us, we hope. He's out of office and is having a little connection issues, but hopefully he'll be able to join us. We have Dave Cutler, who is the Director of Human Emergency Center in Houston, Texas. Bill Hobgood, Project Manager for the City of Richmond. Teddy Cavallari, who is the CIO with the Office of Unified Communications in D.C., Washington, D.C., and Chris Perry, Communications Technical Supervisor for Tempe Police Department. We know you've got a lot of questions, and we encourage you to please speak up today and communicate with us your questions. You can do those two ways. You can submit them via the chat or question feature that is you can see on your screen, or you can email us and we will respond to you as quickly as possible. Keep in mind that a lot of your questions will probably be answered from the participants, but we do encourage you to submit others if they're not covered. So the primary question is, what is PSAP? Well, it's a protocol that's supported by and hosted by the relationships between inlets, APCO, and CSA. Public safety and the monitoring industry identified needs and initiated multiple efforts over 2 decades. ASAP grew out of the relationship between CSAA and APCO, and there's APCO holds a ANSI standard that was released in 2008 that houses the interchange standard. It was updated in 2014. The nationwide platform is enabled by inlets, and it was the creation of a message broker that is housed with inlets. So the question is, why do you even need ASAP? Well, we need to replace technology that's been around almost forever. Picking up the phone and making a phone call is pretty outdated. So we provide the data exchange for electronic transmission of this information between the alarm companies and the PSAPs. The primary enabler that allowed us to move this forward was inlets. Inlets communicates with all 50 states and other territories, and the CGIS network systems covers over 80% of the PSAPs. It's primarily for law enforcement, and for those PSAPs who are only doing fire or EMS only, there is a solution being designed as we speak. So the delivery network and why CSAA is involved. CSAA manages the program. We're an inlet strategic partner. We develop and maintain the infrastructure for the message broker, and we manage the communications between the alarm companies and the CGIS network. CSAA funds the program by hiring and working with subject matter experts with inlets, the state CGIS systems, and the local CAD connections. When you step back and you think about the complexity of the program, it's pretty mind-boggling. It is a project that connects dozens of disparate programs and platforms. It connects hundreds of locations and networks. It will ultimately connect all of the PSAPs. It works to integrate with the different PSAP CAD providers, all of the monitoring centers, and the multiple automation providers. And when you think about it, each of those automation providers and the CAD providers have had to develop the software so that they can meet the criteria for the protocols. They use the inlets transport system, which has some stringent security policies. And it transports all this information in an IT infrastructure in all 50 states involving 50 IT departments, if not more. So what are the benefits of the service? Accuracy and efficiency. It reduces the number of phone calls to the 911 lines, and it does that with elimination of errors for voice communications. Whether it's sound, someone speaking too low, too loud, can't hear, whether it's regional or ethnic dialects, or terminology specific to a location or a region. It eliminates the incident of addressing, and it provides a reduction in time for responses. 10 to 18% of the calls for service to the PSAP from the alarm companies is for fire, medical, burp, hold up, and panic. And the efficiencies are driven by the accuracy so that you and the responders can provide service to the public. It also reduces the workload within your location. Reduces workload not only for what you have today, but for what's coming down the pike with next-gen 911. A lot of the questions we get is, what's the cost? CSAA does not charge the PSAPs anything. So how can we not charge PSAPs anything? It's funded by the CSAA members. We do not make profit. It all goes back into the resources and upgrades and the operations of the program. Why do the members provide money and fund it? Because they see it as a member benefit for themselves and for the accuracy and the reduction of time that they have to be on the phone. So what's it going to cost you as a PSAP? Well, it could cost you a software upgrade if you need it. And if you have a program, maybe it's an interface integration that you need to put in. A connection with your state switch if it's needed, in human resources or whatever is needed for that. And assistance with the address verification to make sure they have someone available watching those addresses. What does it cost the alarm companies? And why are they participating? Well, they pay an annual fee. It's separate from, it's a fee that we collect from them on an annual basis. It's separate. It's not commingled with any other funds, so everything is kept separate and everything is managed just for this program. They may have to update their automation system, their automation software similar to you doing your CAD. They need a dedicated VPN to the message broker, which is housed at Inlets. And like you, they may need to have data resources available for addressing verification. Bill, would you like to speak to how the workflow is managed and how it works?
Sure, Becky. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for those still on the West Coast. So ASAP does not relieve the central stations, the alarm monitoring companies, of any responsibility when it comes to the things that have been mandated by state or local ordinance. If they are still required, if they are required to try to make contact with a key holder or a subscriber if there's a burglar alarm, they still have to do that. In the state of Virginia, there's enhanced call verification that the alarm companies are required to make contact with 2 different key holders. But it's at the point that the alarm companies have done what they're supposed to, and they know they have no other choice but to hand this off to the PSAP. That's when ASAP goes into operation. So some of them refer to it as the easy button nowadays, and they press the easy button and all the data about that alarm and that account goes into the CAD system at the PSAPs that are using ASAP today. The CAD system will do a lookup on the address and the event type, and I will note that all addresses are pre-validated, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if the CAD system detects that there's some issue with this alarm, it can reject it and send it back to the alarm company and say this alarm is rejected because the address is bad or the event type is bad or whatever the situation is. So going forward, let's assume that everything is okay with the transmission. It's turned into a call for service, and that's the first indication that anybody in that PSAP has seen what's been happening behind the scenes up to this point. It shows up as a call for service at the radio operator's dispatch consoles. It might be multiple dispatch consoles depending on the event type. We send police, fire, and EMS on medical alarms in this city, so it would show up on 3 different dispatch consoles. Then, during the progression of the call, if there's a need to converse, either if the alarm operator needs to send additional information, there's an update message, which can be commonly called as chat. They can send additional information. The police officer on the scene may need to know when the key holder is going to be there and can request, do you have an ETA for the key holder? That goes back as an update message back to the alarm operator, and they will reply to it. There's no telephone calls involved. As things progress during the call, when resources are dispatched, when the first unit arrives on the scene, and even when the call is closed out at the end, this information behind the scenes, again, by the CAD system with no additional workload on the dispatch staff, will send those updates to the alarm company to let them know that resources have been dispatched, have arrived, and that the call is closed. And if there is a disposition, here is the disposition.
So this is a communications map, if you will, on how the message broker receives the information and delivers it back to your dispatcher. So on the right-hand side, lower right-hand side, you see that the modules there are for the central station operators who pass the information through the internet, and it goes to the message broker, which is housed at inlets. It's delivered through the inlets wide area network, through the CGIS message switch, down to your PSAP and into your dispatcher on their screen, and vice versa when you're communicating back to them. We have a screen up. Bill, you can speak to this. It was provided by Intergraph, but there is a video. There are videos, not only from Intergraph, courtesy of Intergraph, but also SunGuard, where you can actually see how the program works, see the interactions. Bill, do you want to speak to this a little more?
Sure. So what you see here is just one CAD provider's solution. It happens to be Intergraph. Now, this is not a sales pitch for Intergraph. That just happens to be the CAD system that we're using in Richmond. York County is using a Motorola system. James City County in Virginia is using a SunGuard system. And Houston, I know, is using Northrop Grumman. Chris Perry, who you'll hear from shortly, is using Versaterm, and there are other CAD providers that are in development. But on this particular screen here in Richmond, you'll see the what we call the event information window. There's placeholders for information that's vital to the responders, such as the location and the event type, and who called it in. Now, if there's not a placeholder already on that screen for particular pieces of data, then it will show up in the remarks window, and that may include the trigger points for the alarm, where was the alarm set off or where is it coming from. It may be some additional directions to the site, which really comes in handy for rural counties. The phone number of the site, the alarm operator ID, and the list just goes on. If the alarm company has the information, they'll send it to you and it will become part of that call for service. Down at the bottom left is the what we call the pending calls window, and then the bottom right is the unit status monitor, and finally near the top left, or top right rather, is a map that shows a location of the event. So the CAD systems kind of look very similar in concept, but as from a cosmetic standpoint, they may look different, but the end result is the same. They have to follow the standard. They cannot deviate from the standard, so anything that's presented to the CAD system should appear somewhere on the CAD screen.
So we wanted to give you an idea if you are not active right now, or perhaps haven't even started looking at the program, to give you an idea of some of the alarm companies who are participating in the program. And when we say active, they're sending signal. They are sending communicating with their PSAPs who are also active. When we have the testing, that means they're in various processes of, they've already got the software providers on, speaking on the alarm side now for the alarm companies. They've already gotten their software in and they're testing. And then for onboarding, and these, by the way, move within very short periods of time from one column to the next. Once they start the onboarding process, they've signed their documents, they've signed their contracts, and they move quickly through the testing process into live production. On the right-hand side, you see the PSAPs who are already active, and you see the ones who are in testing. And let me speak to that just a minute, because there are many more PSAPs in the testing or implementation phase than we have listed here. The reason we haven't is we don't have them listed, that they've asked us not to until such time as they're ready to make an announcement. So out of respect for their request, you just may not see those listed there. But we do update this on a regular basis on our website and on the ASAP page, and we'll speak to that in a little bit. So I'm sure many of you are curious how the different PSAPs are using the program and how what the return on their investment is. So from a medium size, we consider Richmond and Washington, D.C. medium-sized PSAPs, Houston being large, of course, and Tempe being on the smaller scale. We wanted to give you an idea of how all the different sizes and locales can use the program, because the program is scalable to your requirements. So Bill, would you like to speak to how Richmond is using the program?
Yes, I will. It's worked very well for us, and I will note that Richmond, in partnership with York County, Virginia, were the two original pilot sites in this venture with vector security on the alarm industry side. 10 years ago almost, in 2006, it was in a pilot mode for 2.5 years, and then pushed in to become an American national standard. But we've had 47,000 of these data exchanges with the alarm industry, which have included burglar alarms, hold-up alarms, fire, and medical. We do dispatch for all three disciplines here, and there has been no telephone calls involved and no call taker involvement. It's worked very well. We haven't had a single mistake through the use of the ASAP program, and we don't have to worry about the spelling mistakes and somebody transposing the street number, because everything is automated. We don't have to worry about the headset issues and trying to interpret those accents that Becky's already talked about. But there's a note bolded here that it works efficiently no matter how inundated the 911 call takers may be. So this takes me back to August 2011 when we had the earthquake on the East Coast, and it damaged the Washington Monument. Well, that earthquake was not too far from Richmond, about 40 miles northwest of Richmond, and that day the 911 centers on the East Coast just went absolutely crazy. Now in Richmond, our call takers answer both the 911 calls and the 7-digit or 10-digit, if you want to call it that, in some cases, numbers just one group of people to answer everything. And that day, the 911 call takers that were on duty could do nothing but try to keep up with the 911 calls. For the alarm companies that tried to call in their alarms, they did not get an answer that day for at least a couple of hours because there was nobody to answer their telephone call. But the alarm companies that participate in the ASAP program, they were able to deliver their alarm notifications to Richmond without any delay whatsoever. It was business as usual. Now, 4 days later, we had Hurricane Irene come through. We were a little bit better prepared for that, but during the peak periods of the storm, there was still those periods where everybody was tied up on 911 calls and nobody left to answer the 10-digit numbers. And again, the alarm companies did not get an answer, the ones that try to use the telephone, but the ones that use ASAP were able to get through and move on to the next thing. As a former communication officer for many, many years, I will tell you that my opinion about taking a call over the telephone from an alarm company was absolutely the worst call you could take for all the reasons that we've talked about, things that could go wrong. But today, receiving an alarm notification through the ASAP program is the most accurate and concise call that you can possibly take.
Okay,
Dave Cutler, good afternoon. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Dave, do you want to speak to Houston?
Sure. No, I'll speak. This is Dave Cutler with Houston. We've been online since April of 2011, and we have nothing but good things to say about it. Of the 50, 60,000 calls that we processed, I think we might have had one, maybe they had a minor addressing error, but practically no problems at all with the system. We're the third or fourth largest PSAP in the country. We're the fourth largest city, soon probably going to be the third largest city. So we have a lot of people. We have a lot of square miles. 2.3 million people is the population. That swells to about 3+ million during the Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 hours. We have a 911 number and we have a non-emergency number, the 10-digit or 7-digit, Bill referred to it as. So we have to answer both of them. Of course, all our alarms come in on the 10-digit number. We receive about 3.1 million phone calls a year, and that's for police, fire, EMS, non-emergency police calls, and non-emergency fire calls. 2.8 million, or most of them, are going to be 911, but we used to receive 130,000 phone calls a month on our 10-digit line. And when we first put it in place, that reduced call volume by 25–30%. The IVR, the interactive voice recorder, reduced call volume by 25–30%. Then when we went online with ASAP, we dropped another 25–30%. So our call volume on our non-emergency phone line went from 130,000 a month to about 65,000 a month. So we had a tremendous reduction. Of course, we dispatch 150,000 alarm calls each year. 12% during this time period we looked at were actually handled by the ASAP, but the problem is there's no one-to-one correlation between phone calls and alarm calls. So for every alarm call we dispatch on, we get at least 2 phone calls for that alarm call. One's to get it dispatched, and the other is to find out how it was cleared. But then in between, there's multiple phone calls that can occur for updates, requests to find out how it was cleared, and it hasn't been cleared yet, so they call back again. So this greatly streamlines that process and gets rid of a lot of that call volume. Like I said, we went from 130,000 phone calls a month down to 65,000 phone calls a month. Half of that was our interactive voice recorder. The other half was ASAP. And we have, I want to say 4 or 5 alarm companies that we work with, and they have a small footprint in Houston at this time. So we hope to get some larger companies on board with ASAP. So we expect to see that call reduction drop, or the call line go down even further. That's about all I got.
Okay, thank you. Teddy, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay. Do you want to speak to how PSAP, the ASAP program's being utilized in D.C.?
Yeah, so we started this program. I mean, we took the lead from what was done in Richmond. Bill has been a great support on this initiative for us. Initially, we didn't think how much value we were going to get out of it, but at this point, I believe we have 6 or 7 alarm companies, ADT being the biggest one of the providers here in the city, which we just got them on about a month ago, and we're seeing the benefits of what we put in place. And as we get more and more of the alarm companies integrated, we are definitely going to benefit from that because we're eliminating mistakes, fat-fingered data going into the system for 911 calls, as well as just eliminating the number of calls that are going to our 911 call takers. What we've noticed, like every other 911 center in the country is seeing, for every major traffic accident or an incident, we're getting a whole bunch of calls that are coming in at the same time. And we're having a hard time staffing up to those peak volume times. So every call that we can take away from a live agent and get it directly into a dispatcher is where we're realizing the benefits. And you can see some of the stats that we provide for DC.
Teddy, this does not include ADT, is that correct? The numbers that you're showing here right now?
I don't think so. Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, ADT just got in about a month ago.
Okay, great. All right. Chris, would you like to speak to Tempe?
Absolutely. Tempe is experiencing pretty much all the same benefits that both Richmond and Houston and DC have reported. We are law enforcement only. The system is got intelligence, or does have the intelligence built into it to reject any attempts to send us a fire or medical call. So we don't have any concerns there. If they do attempt to send us a fire medical call, we send a reject message back to the central station, and that would alert them to go about making a notification through their traditional method of picking up the phone and calling the appropriate agency. In our case, that's the Phoenix Regional Fire Dispatch Center. You can see our call volume here up through the end of the year. We're hitting about 20% of our calls being delivered through ASAP. We have been live since 2012. We're just coming up on our fourth year here in a couple months. However, a week ago, we went live with ADT, and based on the number of accounts they have within our jurisdiction, that will push us over 50% of our alarms being delivered via ASAP, and that the impact of that should continue. A quick demographic explanation for the city of Tempe. We are a little bit smaller, although if you're a much smaller agency, you might argue that we're medium-sized. We are 39 square miles, so we're not huge, but we are landlocked. We have 160,000 population with a daytime population of 200,000, with Arizona State University in the middle of our jurisdiction. We also have 4 major freeways that drive through our city, and those drive our numbers during a rush hour. And you can see here on this graphic the correlation between alarms and accidents, and the timing for that. Rush hour relates to increased accidents, which relates to increased 911 call volume, and alarm calls peak as businesses open and close, and as people leave their homes and return home and either accidentally activate alarms or fail to reset them. That call volume, every time we can release those call volumes, it allows us to go handle those other calls. And again, we're looking more at a customer service benefit than anything else. We take about 29 alarm calls a day on average, about 10% of our call for service volume. And so we're not dealing with huge numbers, but they definitely impact us at our peak times. Our average time to dispatch on ASAP calls is, as you can see here, a full 70 seconds quicker. That directly accounts for the removal of the phone call process. Our statistics here are pulled from the time the call begins to be created. So in a typical phone call, the call taker starts their call for service entry. That's when the time starts, to the time the dispatcher sends a call to a unit. On an ASAP call, the time the call starts and is queued is the same exact moment. So we are seeing a direct savings of 70 seconds in time, specifically because of that phone call. That time is undoubtedly greater simply because we have no way of capturing the time that the central station is on hold, ring time, waiting for the call taker to begin the process. So we know it's greater than 70 seconds, but we can specifically demonstrate a 70-second increase in dispatch time for an ASAP received call.
Thank you, Chris. A couple of the, whether you're aware of this or not, the technology is recognized not only within the program itself, but within various governments and other sources. So if you look at, and we're not going to go through all of these, we'll provide these to you if you'd like to see them. But since 2009, if not earlier, we've been receiving, I like to take credit for that, have been receiving awards for the service. Not only, like I said, with the ASAP, but local governments have recognized it. In the state of Virginia, it got the Governor's Award. Computer World has recognized it. Wired has written about it. And so there's many awards being presented outside of our industry. For you, what CSAA has done is we've created a web page to house resources, and not only is it on the CSAA website, the ASAP page, but there's also APCO has a web page and a section for the ASAP program that gives you information. So we welcome you to visit that. We have created as a resource for you. We send out blogs. We have information on our electronic communications, which we share with the press and with APCO. NLITS is also delivering information. We have created a wiki, which houses, next slide, which houses various categories of information. And these are updated on a regular basis. But it will answer questions like frequently asked questions, some of the things we're trying to answer today. It lists all the PSAPs by state as they come on board. It gives you their status. We have the videos that we mentioned earlier that one is an overview of the program, but also the ones that SunGard and Intergraph have shared with us to give you an idea of how it works. There's questionnaires there that you can, and a tool there that you can send us questions. So we encourage you to sign up for this, to participate with the tools that are available. So we know you have questions. Most of the questions we think, some of these we've answered. We will take your questions as soon as we go through a couple of these. Dipney, you want to start with these?
Yeah, so one of the first commonly questions is, what are my first steps to start the process? You don't even know where to begin.
Bill?
So, Bill, would you like to take this one?
Sure. So the first thing that you should do is to contact your CAD provider. Now, we've already mentioned some CAD providers that are offering this, but there are other CAD providers that are in development and will have a solution very, very soon. I know that for a fact. So contact your CAD provider and see if they offer a solution for your particular platform and your version of CAD system. There may be a situation where they recommend that you upgrade to a newer version, but it's the CAD provider will certainly steer you in the right direction with that. Now, if they don't have an interface available, then just make it known to them. Hey, you've heard about the ASAP program. You really want to do it, and just ask them. Can they get it on their schedule for the near future to do it?
Great, thank you. Another commonly asked question is, well, how adopting the communication help my operation? Hopefully we've answered some of those questions throughout the presentation, but Dave Cutler, would you care to elaborate how it helps?
Sure. As I said, it increased our call volume on our non-emergency line by at least 25 to 30%. There's really no way of telling. It could be more. As alarm companies come on board, we expect to see a greater reduction in that. And we were able to repurpose, I know in city government, FTEs and employees working in positions is always kind of hard to get ahead of. We were able to repurpose some of our call takers to put them in administrative and supervisory positions that was much needed, that weren't going to come during the normal budgeting process. So it really was a win-win for us. We've got more call takers taking less calls. The calls are more accurate. We get no complaints from anybody about the actual ASAP operation, the calls that are delivered via ASAP. So it's really a win-win for everybody involved in the program.
Wonderful, thank you. Another question is, people often think, it's going to be expensive or impossible to get approval through my agency? Oftentimes is a common misconception. And I'm a small, medium-sized PSAP, so I won't really benefit. Only the bigger municipalities can adopt the program. Chris, would you care to elaborate?
Yeah, I certainly can't address exactly the cost with your CAD vendor, how much they may charge for the interface, but by all means ask and figure that out and at least submit the proposal. The benefits, again, we're not going to be cutting bodies here because of our call volume. However, we are definitely seeing an impact on our ring times. And if you're in a jurisdiction where your 911 ring times may be tied to funding, I believe the state of Washington has some of that associated with it, that's certainly something that becomes a bigger impact. You're talking about generally a one-time fee for an upgrade. Maybe there's an addition and a maintenance cost or something like that, but the general funding of this whole process really doesn't go beyond your CAD upgrade. As far as the benefits based on your size, I would argue that probably the smaller you are, the more you may benefit from this, because again, your call volume coming in at these peak times is now being reduced. That's 2 or 3 calls per incident that your 1 or 2 call takers are not having to deal with, and allowing them to deal with their 911 events as well. I would also recommend, if you are in the market or looking to upgrade to a new CAD vendor, consider including this information or request in your RFP to make sure your CAD vendor is offering it or they're willing to develop it, and see if you can incorporate that cost into an RFP process.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Many of the alarm companies currently using the program are not in my area, so it won't benefit my community. How do I get the alarm companies to participate? Bill, do you have anything to?
Sure. Yeah, so I would contend that if the alarm companies in your area are not participating, they will be in the future. This program has gained the interest of over 300 alarm companies, and that is likely to swell to 600. Now, if you have an alarm company that is sending you a lot of alarms, and you don't think they're one of the big players yet with this program, then pick up the telephone and give them a call and say, hey, have you heard about this ASAP program? And I think this is really the way that my PSAP would like to receive these alarm notifications, instead of continuing to have to be prone to the potential of mistakes being made and it taking too long to process the information. So that would be one way. And then the CSAA has an outreach committee that regularly reaches out to PSAPs and the central stations alike, so they can help with this process as well.
Thank you, Bill. Another question, PSAPs think it will cost too much and the alarm companies are profiting at the PSAP's expense.
Yeah, well, we know that, as we mentioned before, all the funding by the alarm companies goes back into the program, and the daily operations, the cost of updating, maintaining the server, so it is definitely a cost neutral. There's no, the benefits, if the alarm companies are, the benefits they see are the savings on the personnel and the accuracy, so that they can manage the accounts in a more timely manner.
Okay. Another question, what happens if the alarm company tries to send a call for service and we don't handle that service? Typically, the messages will get rejected, and the central stations will have to resort to their normal protocol by picking up the phone and making a call for service to the appropriate agency. So that's how in that event that would. Who is impacted if my department shares a CAD with another department? Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
So I know that some agencies that share their CAD system with other agencies have been looking at this program, and And I think that every one of those agencies could ultimately benefit through the sharing of that CAD system and receiving these alarms through the ASAP program. But there's also a division in the XML payload itself, the data that's sent to the CAD system, that distinguishes the alarms that are for one agency versus for another. So there's no negative impact whatsoever. There's a potential of a lot of positive impact depending on whether that group of agencies wants to make use of ASAP, or if only one or two agencies that are sharing that CAD system. Whatever you want to do, you can make it happen the way that this is structured, because the addresses and the city name and the county name will all point to the correct agency.
Perfect, thank you. So what CAD providers have written the interface that uses the ASAP to PSAP service? Currently we have five currently providing services. Others are in the process of writing the interface. If you're interested, just contact your CAD provider and check the CSAA wiki, because we're updating the wiki site with a list of the CAD providers currently providing the interface. But main thing is contact your CAD provider and see, and if not, develop some interest for them to write the interface. Another question, my PSAP state switch is not connected. Why should I support the program? Bill, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, so again, it's my contention that if the state switch today does not support the program, that eventually they will. If no other reason, because of the demand of PSAPs within that state. Now, there's going to be maybe a couple of states that is just going to be real hard sells. They might have a customized switch that's just going to take a lot of money to refabricate and customize. But I will tell you that there is that new design that's underway to be able to address PSAPs in localities such as that, like fire only and EMS only PSAPs, where they'll be able to receive these alarms without having to go through a state switch, and that will be a new design that is underway. It may be 18 to 24 months out yet, but also those of you that use ESI nets and have stepped into the next gen world, we are looking at integration between ASAP and those ESI nets, and I think that will really open up a lot of possibilities for many PSAPs that have not been able to take advantage of this up to this point.
Perfect, thank you. When multiple regions use the same PSAP, how is the addressing verification handled? Bill?
So we ask the alarm companies when we work with them to provide, in some cases, a pre-validation list. And we go through, a PSAP representative goes through and just looks for any obvious errors and brings that back to their attention. You have to understand that ASAP for the newer companies that just joined has been a little bit of a learning curve. Our addresses in the PSAP world, as you know, are not predicated according to zip codes, and that is one thing that has been a learning curve for the central stations. But what is provided in each address verification that comes into the CAD system, and this would be for a company that first comes on board with a PSAP, they deliver all the addresses that they monitor in your locality, and every address has the every address verification transmission has a city name, a county name, also the address, and the CAD system will take that information and compare it to your address verification process, whether that's GIS or otherwise, and then we'll return that information back to the PSAP. I'll use Denton County, Texas as an example. Denton County has a lot of communities down there, and they have the same address probably across 5 different communities within the county in some cases. So this is where that community name comes in very important, and the CAD system can compare that community name and make sure that the correct 123 Main Street is matched up with the community. If it's not, it's returned as a rejection and requires some more work on the part of the central station to do some more homework on it.
Perfect, wonderful.
Okay, so we got some questions that have come in from the audience, so we're going to try and handle those, and we'll open up the mic also.
Yeah, so I'll ask a couple of the questions that came into the question pane here. How does ASAP handle local alarm permit information as part of the address verification process?
This is Dave Cutler from Houston. I can handle that because we do have a alarm permits, and what happens is when the address is entered, it verifies it against a table that resides in CAD and lets it know does it have a valid permit or not. If it doesn't have a valid permit, it sends it back to the alarm company rejecting it, saying no valid permit found.
Okay.
Perfect, wonderful. Another question, has New York become available as a CGIS interface participant?
This is Bill. I can take that one. And I see we have some New York people on the webinar, so hello to them. Some of them I know. New York is work in progress, thanks to efforts by Christina Dravis and John Merkinger and others. But that continues to be work in progress. We presented at the New York State 911 coordinators meeting, and there was a petition that was circulated, I believe, somewhere around 40 to 45 PSAPs signed that petition. It went off to appropriate people at the state. So we continue to work with them, and they continue to work through the New York State resources. It is a custom switch situation, but again, as long as we continue to push and push with the right resources, it is going to happen. It's no doubt about that. It's just a question of when it's going to happen.
Fabulous, thank you. More question here. Does the interface provide the ability to route calls to an agency based on call type? For example, if a single jurisdiction has one PSAP dispatching police and another PSAP dispatching fire, can the alarm event be routed to the designated PSAP?
This is Bill. I can take that one. So what I'm not clear about is there one CAD system into play here? And since these transmissions are going through inlets, that means that the CAD system actually has an ORI. The CAD system here at Richmond and Houston and all these other places that are using it today have an assigned ORI from the state that we've requested. So in that case, if there's one CAD system in play that funnels calls for service out to a second agency for dispatch, then it's just like a call taker putting in the call, and depending on the event type, we'll funnel it out to the other agency. If there's two CAD systems involved here, and in that case, there may very well be two ORIs to be able to get that traffic in there. So you take the case of Tempe, for example. We know that law enforcement type of calls goes to the Tempe PSAP, but fire and EMS have to go to Phoenix. So the alarm companies know this, and we're looking forward to the day that Phoenix will be participating in this, and they will have their own ORI as well.
Great, thank you. You know, Colorado has its state switch open for ASAP.
Colorado has our contact out there, our NLATS representative is very supportive of the program. They're just waiting for the first locality to step up. to say that they are committed to doing ASAP, and if you are the first one, I think that you've got it in the bag, so to speak, because they will open it up. Should be no obstacles in Colorado at all.
Well, thank you. If a call gets rejected, will there be a process where the alarm company follows up in a timely manner to resolve the problem, or do bad addresses still remain in the system and keep getting rejected over again?
This is Bill. I'll take that unless somebody else wants to grab it. But I will tell you that the automation that the alarm companies use has been developed. So number one, if there's not a timely response back from the PSAP, that bells and whistles will go off, and they will pick up the telephone and call in case there is a breakdown, like at NGLATS or the state switch or whatever. But in the case of a bad address, they do need to follow up on that, and no alarm should be transmitted, and there are exceptions to this, but no alarm should be transmitted to a PSAP unless it's been pre-verified through that bulk address verification process when an alarm company first starts participating with a PSAP.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Okay, if there's any more questions, I can open up your, unmute you if you want to raise your hand, or if you just prefer to submit them in the question feature pane, feel free to. If you can't think of your question, or you have questions later on, please contact us. We're available. We have multiple people, staff here monitoring this inbox, and we'll address your questions. And I'd like to also remind everyone that attended today that there will be this webinar was recorded, so we'll send you a link with the recording once it's been uploaded to the hosting site.
If there are no other questions, we want to thank all the participants for your time, and I'm looking forward to our next one, which we will hope to host later in the year. Let us know if you found that these beneficial in answering some of your questions. And remember, CSAA is not selling anything. We have nothing to sell. We simply deliver information for you to know about the program and to help you with some of your questions. And we look forward to working with you in the coming months. We say months because we'd love to see you become active in the program in the coming months, some of you in the next year maybe. So thank you. Have a great day. And to all our participants again and speakers, thank you again for taking the time out to help us today.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.